So here I am with my co-author, Dr. Diane McIntosh, of this fabulous book called You Belong Here, even if I say so myself, How to Make People Feel Safe to Be Their Best, Take Bold Risks, and Win. And a key aspect of making people feel safe to be their best, take bold risks, and win is to create enriching relationships. And so we focus a lot in the book about what are some of the rules for relationship health? And of course, Diane is all about helping people build strong, supportive, healthy, replenishing relationships. And so we've identified 6 rules for relationship health that we will be walking through in this specific interview. And as we say in the book, Diane, you are constantly exploring how to heal damaged relationships and the people who are hurt by them. So just share with us, Diane, the importance of relationships for mental and emotional health.
Well, social support is the most powerful predictor and protector of our mental health. So if you do not have a strong relationships with the people around you, and that includes within family, and if you don't have close family, friends, but also work, because we all spend so much time at work. So if the people around you, those relationships aren't enriching, if they don't feel safe and comfortable and rewarding, that has a big impact on your mental health. And it is a really, really powerful predictor of, if you do have a mental illness, of your ability to fully recover.
Yeah, great. And so just like any dynamic, it works better when you understand the rules that make for relationship health. And so together, Diane and I identified 6 rules for relationship health that we will be walking you through today. And so the first rule is to treat yourself the way you want others to treat you. And so I have a quote that says, when I'm by myself now, I remember to treat myself as a most honored guest. So I talk to myself the way I would talk to Diane, the way I would talk to great friends, the way I would talk to valued clients, because I know ultimately the way I talk to myself will be the way I talk to others. So previously, if I did something that was stupid, I would say to myself, how could you be so stupid? And then, of course, that begs an answer that is going to be disempowering. Now, when I do something like that, I go, you are so smart, Mr. Lipkin, but that was such a stupid thing to do. But that was then, this is now, you've learned, so move forward. Now, Diane, in your podcast, your extraordinary podcast, you, in fact, interviewed Luke Prokop, who came out as a professional hockey player as being gay, and he shared with you why he actually did that and the impact that it had on him. So can you just share a little bit about your conversation with Luke, and then maybe the learning from that conversation for the people who might be watching or listening to this podcast?
Well, I think that rule, treat yourself the way you want others to treat you, kind of is the inverse, is flipping the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, on its head. But I think it's so important. And my conversation with Corey Hirsch and Luke really brought that to the fore, where he wasn't out. It was a burden he was carrying. He wanted to share it. And when he finally did, he realized that this was absolutely the right thing to do. It was freeing. But he also realized that when being ambivalent or negative with yourself really adds to that burden. And we know that our internal narrative, the way that we talk to ourselves, is really a critical part, an aspect of our mental health. And it's part of being a resilient adult, is learning how to speak to yourself with empathy. Just as you said, Mike, you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, hey, that was stupid, but you're so good looking. Trying to find the positives, and more seriously, I wasn't my best, but I learned from that experience, and I'm going to take that forward I really hate sitting in regret. It is not
Yeah.
something I enjoy. And therefore, I try to confront it, suck out all the learnings I possibly can from the experience, and then say, I'm going to leave it behind. And that was really a lot of what Luke said was I sat in this pain for a very long time. And I realized that I was hurting myself. And by being ambivalent with myself and negative myself, it actually added to that weight and that pain.
Beautiful. So, Diane, you mentioned the word regret. And oftentimes in my programs, I talk about the most painful emotion, other than maybe the grief of having lost somebody closest to you, is regret, because by definition, there's nothing you can do about it. It's something in the past. So, talk to us a little bit about if you are feeling that regret, which is the lamenting or the mourning of an opportunity you've let slip or something that you've done that you wish you wouldn't have done. What would be a way to get out of regret and actually turn that learning into something that could help you moving forward?
I think first you have to recognize and accept that, I'm regretting this thing and it's making me miserable. And then this is what I do honestly every day, because it's not uncommon for me to say or do something that I wish I hadn't said or done, is just very quickly trying to identify and then say, okay, I've learned this. I'm going to put this in my brain and make sure that I do everything I can to avoid doing that again. It
Yes,
it is it is a pattern of behavior that you have to do again and again for it to actually be something like learning how to drive a standard shift car or learning to do anything else that's complicated. Identify the problem and then practice not doing it again. Take
yes,
those learnings. It's just so critical. And it's a small piece of that, just to add on. It's one of the gifts I've given myself as an adult is forgiveness. And we don't forgive for anyone else. We forgive for us. So I don't want to
yes,
carry around anger or regret or resentment. And part of forgiving is also forgiving yourself when you've done
yes.
something that you know is moronic. Your intentions were not that. Forgive yourself, take the learnings, and then leave it behind.
I love that. Elsewhere in the book, we talk about drink the FGA tonic every day, and the F stands for what you just spoke about: forgiveness, forgiving others, and forgive yourself. And forgiveness means leave the anger behind, because no one plays best or performs best in a state of anger. The G is gratitude for the fact that you've got this far and you're actually in this moment. So right now, just so you know, Diane, I'm practicing that gratitude. I think it's more than a minor miracle that the two of us are having this conversation, and a whole lot of other folks are going to eavesdrop on it. And then agency, of course, is the impact that you can have, seeing yourself at the cause of the matter, not at the effect of the matter. And so if you drink the FGA tonic every day, you're far more likely to treat yourself the way you want others to treat you. Which takes us to the second rule. And when we discussed this, Diane, by definition, it was a very pleasing rule to discuss, because it's simply this: bring people joy. So, Diane, talk to me about how important it is, or just what it means, to bring people joy as part of the relationship.
Your level of joy is going to be different depending on the circumstance and every day, but that you enter into the start of every communication with a hello, with a pod, and even just getting in the elevator and saying good morning to the people that are there. That spreading of positivity and joy is a way of trying to live your life every day. And some of us are less comfortable doing that, less likely to speak out, but or to say hello, but to always think about, what am I bringing to this relationship? Positivity, warmth. Am I making that other person feel glad to be here in this conversation? It's Even if you have a little bit of social anxiety or you're more of an introvert, just having a positive look on your face that engages that person and makes them feel like you're glad that they're there.
Mm. So, are you glad that you're with me in this conversation, Diane?
You know I am. Look at this smile. I'm a
But
little bit the more out there. You can see clearly
yes,
how I feel about being here. But I also
yes,
think people who are less likely to have that big smile on their face. It doesn't mean that they're snobbish or they're not interested, but
Yes,
they too need to work on those kind of skills so that they
yes.
make people feel comfortable.
Yes, which is such a great point because I'm just reading a little passage, and this was your thought in the book. Some people are naturally warm and sunny. Others may be inherently reserved or socially anxious. On the surface, they may appear to be frosty, aloof, or unfriendly, but that is rarely the case. It is their natural introversion or the weight of anxiety that makes it challenging for them to seem comfortable or exude warmth, especially with new people and large groups. So, the moral of this story is some of us come out the womb and we're naturally sunny. Others of us have to work hard at it. But other folks who you're meeting, they really don't care whether you regard yourself as introvert or extrovert. What they need is that warm welcome. As someone once said to me, Diane, leaders bring the weather, or leaders bring the sunshine. And I think it's very appropriate that as I'm having this conversation with you, it's literally snowing outside.
Yeah.
And so just like you, I'm having 5, 6, sometimes even 7 of these Zoom or team calls a day. And I always want to make sure that when someone's talking to me, I represent a highlight of the day so that they never regret having given me that time. And so rule number 2, give other people joy, make sure you're the highlight of their day. And there's a quote that I have that I endeavor to live by, and it's simply this: act your way into a way of feeling. Don't try and feel your way into a way of acting. So in other words, just acting like you could be the weather, like you could be the sunshine, and just acting like you want to bring other people joy actually gets you into that emotional state. Does that make sense, Ryan?
I love it. I absolutely. And, just starting with a smile on your face, that introverted person or that less comfortable person is going to feel like it's safe to engage with this person. I want my team members, for instance, I want them to feel safe and comfortable to say to me, I don't think that's right. Or I have this other idea. And if I am not approachable, then they aren't going to do that. And that the existence of this technology, Rapids, that I'm working on, depends on them feeling safe and comfortable with me. And therefore, I have to be a safe space.
Beautiful. So let's get to the third rule, which is very simple: give much more than you receive. And so what I've discovered, Diane, in all the 30 years that I've been doing this work, is that the real currency of success is not money per se. It is the currency of reciprocation. And I have found that if I do the right things for the right people, and I exceed their expectations, they will reciprocate. And in fact, our relationship, Diane, and the 18 months that we've been working together since we started and completed the book, I have always felt that as much as I've wanted to give you, you've always given me back more. So talk to us a little bit about your belief in always giving more than you receive.
Well, we are more dependent than any other mammals for a longer period of time. So you have kids, I have kids. They seem to be still dependent, but they require an awful lot in the beginning. So you are very self-centered in the beginning. It's all about you. And then as we get older and older, you start to realize that the world doesn't, or you should, if you have good parenting, the world does not revolve around you. And that in order for you to get along and build these enriching relationships and build a career, you actually have to give of yourself. You have to be an honest broker and using all of those opportunities, not just to take, but also to give.
Yes.
But there's another piece of that really, I've learned so much from my patients over the years, much more than they've ever learned from me, I'm sure. And sometimes people are so ill that they cannot work. I always try to encourage them to volunteer, to give of themselves, because I know that if you can't work for gainful employment, you lose the opportunity to give. And when you give, you get so much back. That's why volunteering, people love to do it because they get so much more back from the time that they expend. It's a growth opportunity. So I think that thinking in terms of what can I get back from that person limits you, where you say, what can I give that person? And then it comes back more than you ever imagined.
Exactly. So, it's interesting. In certain relationships, there are people I work with, and I call them satisficers. They do just enough to suffice. They do just enough to give me what it is I paid for. And then there are others that I call the extra milers. They go above and beyond and consistently delight and surprise me. And by the way, those are the folks that I want to give even more of my business to. And that's obviously someone that I endeavor to be. So, let's go to the fourth rule, and this is an interesting one, and that is simply fight fair. And it's interesting here, Diane, and this was, I think, one of the great points from the book where we said the hallmark of a healthy relationship is the friction that occasionally erupts from equal partners rubbing each other the wrong way. We said in the home space of the workplace, disagreements will flare, temperatures will be raised, and people will reach an impasse. But when the partners are equal, yes, they will reach that impasse and then they will break through if they feel that there is this give and take, and if each and every one of them is feeling like they're treated fairly. Now, in the book, I give the example of a client of mine who was in negotiations with his partners, and they had certain leverage over him. And they were using that leverage to negotiate terms that he felt were grossly disadvantageous to him. Because he was locked into the relationship, he had to accede to their request. But he said to me, Mike, I feel like they've leveraged me unfairly. And as soon as I can get out of this relationship and find another partner, I will. And that's exactly what he did. So, Diane, share with me your sense of what it means to fight fair, and maybe when you should be cognizant of when you're not fighting fair.
It's a big question. And, I read again what we wrote here, and I'm so proud of it because I think it really brings out some of the really important pieces of in all relationships, people have arguments. But if someone feels that they are being dehumanized, they're not being respected in the discussion, they're being humiliated. And man, I hate seeing, especially, parents or teachers humiliating someone. If you humiliate someone, you've lost the fight. Even if you win the fight, you have lost the battle. And so first of all, I think most importantly, do I really need to fight? Is this the right time for the discussion? And setting up the parameters of exactly what the argument is about. I think fight is strong, but we're writing a story here. So if I'm going to battle, is this a hill I want to die on? I don't want to fight the whole mountain. And if you've had those arguments before where people are, yeah, but this, and what about that? And wait a minute, let's just stay on this. This is the problem now. Being targeted, trying to keep everyone, is this the right place? Is this the right time? Are these the right people to have in this discussion? I think the other thing is that when you're in a heated discussion with someone who would be, you said an equal, view themselves as a subordinate. So it's someone who reports to you in a reporting relationship with a child, always remembering that that power differential has an impact on their comfort and confidence. And you have to kind of make room for that. As a leader myself, I have these discussions with the team members. I was thinking of someone the other day, and it got a tiny bit heated with her being frustrated about something. And I'm always thinking, I am in this boss position. I got to make her feel safe to be able to have these discussions. And we sometimes call it a little bit of a sandwich there, where you're saying, I totally respect what you're saying, but I view it in this way, or I understand and I hear where you're going, but what about this way? So you're letting them know that you're hearing them, you're respecting them, but you're not sharing maybe the same thoughts.
Exactly. And so there's certain phrases that we said when you're having these conversations, especially if it's someone where you may be in a position of power, you want to just use phrases like, yes, and I see your point of view. I hear you. I understand. I appreciate. I'm sorry for. I actually got it wrong. I shouldn't have. That's right. And I acknowledge you. All right, Diane.
I think one more piece to that, Mike,
Yes.
is I think it's a superpower to be able to share personally and admit when you're wrong. If you're in an argument and you realize, you talked me into it, I'm wrong, for heaven's sake, say it. Because people remember, they don't remember exactly the words you used. They don't remember exactly what they heard. They remember how you made them feel. And when you
Yes.
say, you know what, I screwed up, you're right, I'm sorry, even if your intention wasn't to harm, just admitting that is really powerful.
Very good. So rule number 5, and you and I had a lot of discussion around this, is clarify and contractualize mutual commitments. So in any contract, if you're buying a car, if you're buying a house, if you're opening a bank account, there are all these agreements and all these contracts that you sign. And certainly in any relationship, there should be a clarification and a contractualization of mutual commitments. So since we wrote this, and this was another thought that you provided me, Diane, I make sure that in any engagement, the expectations are crystal upfront. And then every step of the way, I'm holding myself to following through, and I'm also holding the other person to following through. And I find now that we can actually track each other's mutual contribution and mutual commitments. There are far less misunderstandings along the way, and therefore a far more satisfying conclusion to our projects as we complete them. So I'm just curious, Diane, from your standpoint, just your thought around the importance of clarifying and contractualizing mutual commitments.
They say fences make good neighbors, governance makes good partnerships, that you have
Nice.
governance that is clear. And if someone is failing to show up at meetings or doing what they're supposed to be doing, you've had an agreed upon governance. They are failing to meet that. And that's the opportunity to go back and say, hey, we agreed it was going to go like this. What's going on? Maybe they've forgotten what was there, or this needs to conclude because it's not working for both of us. That agreeing, going in and having that governance, and it depends on the relationship, obviously, but having written it down is of course extremely powerful as well. We all like to take people's best intentions, and that's nice and it's important, but I think in any kind of important relationship, a business relationship, it's really critical that you have clear governance and that you remind yourself of what that is every now and again.
I love that. So fences make good neighbors, governance makes good partners. And I'll share with you, one of my clients actually was going through a rocky period with his wife, and they had been married for some time. And he said, based on the conversation I had with him, he'd actually, together with his wife, wrote down their mutual commitments and they pinned it to their fridge. So every time they look at the fridge, they see their commitments to each other. And he said, Mike, it's extraordinary. It's just 5 commitments that they made to each other. We write about them in the book. And that has made all the difference because it's a constant reminder of what it is that will define their phenomenal relationship.
What
So,
might
Diane,
happen, Mike, as they go forward, the more that you're going through a rough period and you really rely on governance then. You really rely on those rules of engagement then. But as they get through that rough period, they may find that they don't have to look at it as often because, like cognitive behavioral therapy, learning new skills, learning how hard it is to drive that standard shift car. But once you got it, you don't need to look again. Before long, it'll be on the fridge, but it'll be all withered and maybe there's some tomato stain on it or whatever, because they don't have to look at it. They're living it, right?
I love that. And then at some point, they'll frame it as a reminder
Yeah.
of this interesting
If there's
period in their lives.
As long as there's no tomato on it, it's all right. That's gross.
Exactly. All right, Dan. So look, the 6th rule is own everyone's success, but accept their failure. And we have a great quote here where we said, it may take 2 to tango, but one dancer usually cares more about the outcome than the other. And so I have a quote that I live by, and it says, it's amazing what you can achieve if you don't care who gets the credit. So when I'm working with folks, I want to be 100% responsible for the success of a venture, irrespective of whether other people, should we say, pull their weight or not. But if there's a failure, if people have tried their best and we haven't achieved the optimal result, I also fully accept that. and work with that to actually still achieve the outcome that we desire together. So, Diane, just talk to me a little bit about what you can achieve if you see yourself as responsible for success and you accept, you forgive, and you even learn from failures along the way.
Well, it kind of brings us back to the beginning of the conversation where I'm in the middle of this startup and we have wins and we have challenges. And sometimes those failures are due to communication. We haven't been clear about roles and responsibilities. The governance has broken down. The worst thing that I do is go and get angry with everyone. The first thing I do is say, okay, how do we make sure this does not happen again? Ultimately, I am responsible. I am responsible in my team if something breaks down. So how do we make sure that we don't end up there again? I'm also responsible for that. I will say that if you do create an environment where people feel safe, where they feel like they belong, where they can ask those difficult questions, everyone becomes that extra miler. Everyone wants to win. Everyone wants to feel responsible and step up and help when someone else is struggling. And that's what's happening in my team is that, I've heard again and again, we have kudos at the beginning of every big team meeting where, we call out each other, and what I hear again and again is, I was having a rough time with this and Brad, you came to my rescue, or Carol was asking for some help. And not only did she have one person, she had 5 people put their hands up. That is what a safe environment is all about. I have to take responsibility for all of the challenges and I want my whole team to celebrate all of the wins.
Beautiful. So, to everyone who's watching or listening, I'll give you a quote that we have in highlights in the book, and it says, when things are at their tightest, be at your most generous. So that's what we want to leave you with. And remember, the 6 rules are: treat yourself the way you want others to treat you, bring people joy, give more than you receive, fight fair, clarify and contractualize mutual commitments, and own everyone's success, but accept their failures. This is Mike Lipkin. This is Dr. Diane McIntosh, and we look forward to informing and inspiring you in our next exciting conversation.
Thanks, Mike.